Hi everyone, welcome to this hopefully short video that I'm just putting up kind of as a test, but also as a sort of first attempt at making content with an actual camera. Actually making something that isn't a speaker's corner, something that isn't live, so to speak, but rather a pre-recording, where I can talk about my thoughts on different topics and whatever that might be. I have some ideas for some content, but for now it's just a quick test. We'll see what you guys think of this, but I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about who I am as a person and about what I'm doing, particularly at Speaker's Corner, and where I foresee the immediate future going. So, as you guys know, my name's Chris, and you're watching this at Chris's Speaker's Corner. And if you are watching this, you've probably seen me either on this channel or most likely on SOCO Films as part of the SOCO team at Speaker's Corner on most Sundays, debating and preaching the gospel. As you can imagine, because of the makeup of Speaker's Corner, predominantly most debates are actually happening with Muslims. So we debate the Dawah teams, we debate the Da'i, we debate any sheikhs that are there or anyone who claims to be a person of knowledge. And we also talk to just average Muslims who have gone into the park, who are open-minded, who are sincere, who are looking for the truth, who want to have an intellectual conversation about their faith and about Christianity, and to make a kind of comparison between them to see which one is more likely to be true, which one is the truth, which one actually represents the objective world clearer, and which one is perhaps not so much, to put it lightly. So I have always had a background since I became a Christian in apologetics and polemics. It's always been something I was interested in because I've always been interested in questions of science, questions of philosophy, questions of history. So I always had an academic interest, and I wanted to take that interest and to see exactly where does that fit in the context of Christianity. When I first became a Christian, one of the first things I did was I started reading a lot. I read many books talking about I guess you said, the scientific landscape for a Christian. What does that mean? What do we mean when we talk about questions of evolution and questions of creationism? What does it mean when we talk about literal aspects of theology compared to taking things figuratively or poetically or whatever it might be? And that absolutely fascinated me, and I spent many years just reading different books, trying to learn as much as I could. And there was never any immediate attempt for years and years to aim this at anyone other than atheists. It was a pure attempt to mostly relate to those who were in my immediate circle, and that was either agnostics, atheists, spiritualists, or anywhere in between. But it was never aimed at sort of an Islamic background. It was always in the context of people who would be more skeptical to religion as the concept rather than just be a different religion. So I did that for many years, and I think eventually I sort of I was happy with it. I was happy with what I was learning, although I very much love the debates. I love the kind of academic style of debate. So for me, Speaker's Corner, it's a totally new thing because I'm not arguing like in an academic setting. I'm arguing with people who are just going to speak over you and who are just going to interrupt you at any point, who honestly think that yelling Allahu Akbar or Takbir is a genuine counter argument. And there's been a lot of over the last few months of trying to learn how to deal with that and learning how to better suit in to Speaker's Corner, because it's not my forte. What was comfortable to me, it was very foreign to me. But that being said, though, what led me to Speaker's Corner was a slow journey, and it actually started in around 2015. And it started in 2015 because I was introduced, and I'm pretty sure it was by the YouTube algorithm. I don't think it was by anyone I knew, but I was introduced to someone who was giving a presentation to a live audience, about the history of Islam. And this person claimed that Islam have a completely wrong at its very root understanding of their own historical beliefs about their own religion, about not just their religion but the geography, not just about the geography but the people, not just about the people but the very scripture they hold, the book itself. And this person was none other than J. Smith. And J. Smith was quite of an eye-opener to me, because when I was watching this presentation, it wasn't just one, it was multiple, because I was intrigued by them. In fact, I actually went on to see the debates J. Smith did, particularly with Dr. Shabir Ali. I think the last one he did was in 2014. But watching these debates, watching these lectures, made me realize that actually there's something uniquely profound about such a major religion having these historical issues that I simply cannot relate with as a Christian. There was never any question for me as a Christian, or really for any Christian who studies into this, about whether or not Jesus existed. There's not even you end up with fringe Jesus mythicists, and that's as close as you get. A mainstream scholarship of every branch will say that that's silly. There was never any question that Jerusalem actually existed at the time of Jesus. There was never any question about whether or not Jerusalem could provide enough water to sustain thousands of people there. There was never any question about geography that was permeant to the faith, to the very center of the faith. But with Islam, that was different. With Islam, there were questions that I think, at least the way that J. Smith was phrasing them, I thought, if that's true, if that really is the case, then that is profound. It is profound because there is an entire religion that has not yet done a full academic search into its own history. With Christianity, I guess I became too comfortable with my own faith and my own understandings, because I was used to seeing at least 300 years of academic scholarship into the New Testament accounts, into the four Gospels, into the letters of Paul, into knowing who Jesus was. I mean, we have an entire historic approach championed by people like Bart Ehrman, who steer rigorously to that historical approach and won't accept anything that's not a part of it, anything that's just tradition. But we still have that historical approach as a strong foundation to build up on. We can say, from an atheist point of view, that Jesus existed, that he was known as Jesus of Nazareth, about where he was claimed to have been born, about the fact that he was baptized by John the Baptist, the fact that he was crucified on Pontius Pilate, and the fact that the earliest disciples believed he was resurrected. Now, to us, that's an amazing foundation to stand firm on. And I think before I heard about the difficulties that Islam has in its own historical roots, I guess I took it for granted just exactly how strong the Christian position it really is. So hearing about this Islamic position and hearing about how weak it was, and how there was an entire form of reformed scholarship that was now taking this apart, was quite eye-opening. And I was intrigued. I was intrigued because I wondered how far that actually went. I've always found that I've been interested in other faiths and learning more about that from a polemic point of view, or from an apologetics point of view, when it's a real part of life. So, for example, I happen to have known, and I still know, a few Jehovah's Witnesses. So from my point of view, learning about Jehovah's Witnesses as a group was incredibly useful for me, being able to have outreach with them, being able to discuss with them, and ultimately to know exactly where it is that they stand and what their theology is, and why it isn't correct, why it isn't orthodox theology. So that had a practical use. Like I could walk, and I still can, I can walk across the city centre and bump into a Jehovah's Witness who willingly wants to talk to me. And that's brilliant, and I absolutely love and cherish that. And for that reason, learning about Jehovah's Witnesses was a practical choice. It was something that I could apply in my life and see results from it. I could see fruit from it. And likewise, when I started to learn about Islam, starting with Jay Smith, and then of course I saw others starting to look at actual Islamic scholars and see what they were saying as well, which in many ways also shocked me. Um, and that took my interest. And so I saw Jay Smith was not only doing his own lectures, but he was also going to this place called Speaker's Corner, and that he had his own channel, his own YouTube channel, which is Fanda Films, and he had his own The Jay Show as well that he eventually started doing. And I started to get really involved in sort of I guess he calls it now the sin shifters, the standard Islamic narrative shifters, which is part of a team that he's put together where he's just going through all the Islamic information and just tearing it apart, which is amazing stuff. So I started to notice he was going to this place called Speaker's Corner, that he was going on this ladder, and he, using his very loud voice, he was able to speak directly to the crowd, predominantly of Muslims, and he was able to question them directly about real, hard-hitting, foundational questions about the Islamic faith. And I was shocked when I saw the absolute terrible answers that were given by some people who were considered to be people of knowledge. And this intrigued me, and from finding this, I also found out there were other speakers at Speaker's Corner. This is when I found SOCO Films, and SOCO Films drew my attention because I noticed that there were speakers there who I thought were profoundly good, who had an amazing way of speaking, amazing way of dialoguing, and even debating directly with these so-called da'is, so-called Muslims of knowledge. And I realized that what was happening is I was watching these videos and I was actually learning and preparing for replies of my own free choice without any prompting of it. And at times I was doing deep dives into topics. And I realized, hang on a sec, I'm doing this basically for fun. Like, nothing's prompting me to do this. I watch a video and the Muslim will say something like, perhaps he'll talk about the age of Aisha and he'll give a defense, or perhaps it'll be Allah can't enter his creation because it doesn't befit his majesty, whatever it might be. And I'll do a deep dive on that topic. And I thought, well, I'm becoming more confident that I know the Muslim position and I also know the Christian position, and as well as what the counter to the Muslim position is. And I thought, well, I should actually probably just do something. I should actually just go to Speaker's Corner and sort of get involved and actually contribute in some way. And I prayed about it. I very much wanted to see if this was something that I was called to do by the Spirit and would be useful, and I wouldn't just turn up and make an absolute fool of myself. So I sort of went there first on a sort of stealth mode. I didn't really talk to many people, whether they were Christian or Muslim. I sort of just listened and tried to see what I could ascertain from basically just listening to the crowd. And that worked for probably 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, then I think I debated Mansour. I think that was the very first debate I think I ever had on camera. I think it was at the Trinity, if I remember correctly. So that was interesting. And then at this point, I started to notice other Christians who I had seen on SOCO Films. So I went up to them, I introduced myself. I had a video with Bob where me and Bob, I was on camera for the first time on SOCO, and there was a film where we just talked about what it is to have a vocation, what it is to be called to do something in life that is Christ honoring and is Spirit led, as opposed to your own desires and your own wishes, which is in contrast with Scripture. So, and that isn't to say, by the way, that a vocation is, I guess you would say, particularly religious. I don't think that's necessarily the case. There's plenty of people who are called on their vocation to do something very secular. There are people who are called to, for example, just live a humble life as a farmer, provide for their family and kids, and to raise their children well, as Christians and as a Christian man or a Christian woman. and some people have that as their vocation. It's not particularly overtly religious. It's not particularly grand, as some people might think about it, but it is a honorable, good, and heartfelt vocation in the Lord, and that's good. But I digress. So I was at SOCO. I was at Speaker's Corner. Sorry. Introduced myself to Bob. Reflected upon the things that he said about what it means to have this vocation and whether or not this is something I could actually sort of devote my time to, and whether or not it was right for me to devote my time to it. So that was, I think, practice probably about a month, a bit more than a month of reflection. I was still coming to Speaker's Corner at the time, and I was also still studying, an immense amount of study. As you can imagine, when you're engaging with either dais or whether it's atheists or other even heretical Christians, you have to constantly look into study and make sure that you're always aware of these particular topics, having an opinion, having a knowledge of references in your head that you can pull up if you can. And that gets particularly challenging with Islam because their sunnah is quite substantial. So you not only have to remember references in the Quran, you then have to contrast it with an entirely new group of literature, which is the Sunnah. And then you have to remember not just the Sunnah, what the Sunnah says, but then you have to remember the grade of the Sunnah. You have to remember the particular book it comes from, and then you have to remember the particular reference for it. So it's a ton of memorization, which is fun, and you're always engaged in that and always learning and always trying to remember more than you previously could. But so it was through this that I came to realize that God has always seemingly been putting me in a position where I'm called to engage intellectually with topics, whether that's apologetics, Christian apologetics, or whether that's polemics either against atheism or now seemingly against Islam. And I'm exploring that to its fullest, and that's why I have this YouTube channel now. So I have a place to put my content and to sort of share what's going on at Speaker's Corner, to share a message of the gospel, and to share a polemic against those who think that the Christian message isn't intellectual, or that the Christian message is somehow trumped by a different message. Because I wholeheartedly believe that that's not the case. The Christian message stands supreme compared to any other message, compared to any secular message, or compared to any Islamic message, compared to any ideology that you can think of. Christianity stands supreme. And that's kind of a short video really about how I kind of came to Speaker's Corner. As you can imagine, my demeanor isn't particularly, I guess you'd say, on the aggressive side of things, or more aggressive side of things. I'm quite sort of cool and relaxed about how I engage. I try to keep a level head, and I think that actually came from a lot of experience with people who they themselves wouldn't be able to keep calm, and you can kind of tell in the dialogue, you can kind of pick up on that. And I always thought that if I lose an argument, at the very least, I'll keep my character. I'll keep my head. I won't yell at people. I won't scream at people. I won't start just insulting them and calling them horrible names and stuff like that. And I always thought that in and of itself is actually a polemic. If you can keep your character, then you have kind of I guess you'd say a confidence and a calmness that is more convincing than some arguments that will be made against you, simply on that merit alone. And given the weakness of many arguments that are made against Christians, particularly from the dais at the corner, so sometimes I think it's actually good enough just to keep calm and to understand that as Christians we have the truth and Islam doesn't. And for that reason, there isn't anything to fear. We just need to be willing to listen, to speak boldly and proclaim the truth, and to never give in to falsehood, and to take every false philosophy captive, and to replace it with the truth of the Christian message. And that truth is Lord Jesus Christ. I think, yeah, I think so far things are going really good. And with the grace of God, things will continue to be good. And we'll see where this channel goes, what kind of content I'm going to be making soon. I'm not sold on this format. It is basically just me talking to a camera with a microphone. I have some ideas about mixing this up with some particular topics that I'll research, and I'll start showing stuff on screen. Again, possibly live streams as well in the future. So we'll see how that goes. But thanks for listening, and I'm sure I'll see you again soon. Bye, guys.